Hello everybody, and welcome to this Straits Times Business Times Roundtable on Budget 2024, brought to you by UOB. Let me start with a very broad and general question. Reskilling and upskilling is nothing new. We've been at it for several years, but has it gained more urgency now than maybe 5 years ago? What do you say, Minister?
I think the answer is yes. And the reason is because the pace of change has been accelerating. When I joined government, which was back in 2012, we were starting to talk about, ramping up skills. Now, about 10 years later, the scene has just accelerated so quickly. So areas like digitalization, new growth areas like sustainability, and of course now with AI, the speed at which it's developing, these are all things that both employers and employees have to grapple with, and hence the need to upskill, learn new skills, diverse skills has accelerated.
Right. Desmond, do you have anything to add from the point of view of workers? Do they feel extra pressure to upgrade now than 5 years ago?
Yes, indeed. So in fact, we did an economic sentiment survey recently, just before the budget, about 2,000 respondents, asking them about how the trends of AI and sustainability are affecting them and the sense of security in the job. So actually, we realized that about 13% says that they are worried about their job losses due to AI. And about more than 50%, I think it's about 52%, feels that actually they may keep the job, but the job is going to change. And therefore the need for reskilling is now more urgent.
Right.
It's more than 50% of the workforce. So I think that's quite a sizable number that echoes what the minister said, that the need for change is upon us, and the workers also feel it.
Right, right. Since you mentioned AI, Yuit, maybe I can address this to you since you're a technology entrepreneur. How does AI change the need for training? I mean, what kind of new training is required in this age of AI?
Yeah, I think first we got to understand that AI is advancing and evolving very rapidly. So I think the important part is that companies and people have to start really getting their hands dirty and really using. And you can look at AI from two perspectives, right? As a practitioner and as a user of AI. And in both areas, I think it's really important that we as a nation start to build up competency, depth, and utilization, and get really comfortable with it. 10 years ago, we were talking about digitalization, and many companies were going up along the digitalization process, and now we're talking about AI. But the timeline is so much more compressed and accelerated, and we are dealing with a 1 year, and so much has changed. So I think that it is at the right time that we're looking at reskilling and having all these schemes to look into upskilling our workforce.
Okay. Alvin, would you like to add anything on AI and the sort of changes that it's bringing about in the economy and what that means for workers?
I think that AI really is coming in at a very accelerated process, so that need for reskilling suddenly got even more urgent. But at the same time, right, I think we had this conversation before, there is problems with the accuracy of AI. And we know that it's going to play a big role. We just do not know where exactly it will fit in and how it will do the transformation. We know it's going to happen, but a lot of things are missing. So I think you have to get the population, the workforce ready in this kind of times when they change itself. I think in terms of putting in more investments into this, right, it also helps that there will be those researchers, right, to enhance that accuracy of AI, to make it more usable in that form itself, rather than just being a very smart PA like what we were discussing earlier. And I think at the same time, education probably have seen that shifts itself. What a person learned 20 years ago, who is still currently in the workforce, may not have that relevant, the level of relevance to the current market. And therefore, that reskilling process is also quite urgent, which is why that segment of the market is important.
Right, right. Okay. Now, one of the big initiatives in the budget, which I referred to earlier, is the step change in SkillsFuture credits for mid-career workers aged 40 and above. So from periodic top-ups of $500, they now will get a one-time credit of $4,000, which will not expire. On top of that, they will get wage support if they follow full-time courses. So these are pretty significant changes. But which raises several questions. One of them is why this focus on this particular demographic of 40-year-old plus workers? Minister, could you focus on that?
Yes, there's a very good reason why we're focusing on the 40 and above age group. It's really because when you first come out of school, our IHLs, right, what you've learned should have currency and should be able to take you through at least for another decade or more. Whereas those who've already been in the workforce may not have caught up with some of these things, which is the point that you made. So the best way I can illustrate it is this example, which I encountered yesterday at a dialogue with ISCA. The moderator mentioned a friend of his, 40 and above, who wanted to use his SkillsFuture for data analytics. And if you think about it, somebody in his 40s would have come out of university 20 years ago, which would make it early 2000s. Early 2000s, data analytics wasn't even a thing. In 2013, people were still starting to talk about that as the new big thing. We weren't even thinking of data as an asset, let alone how to analyze and use it. So when this person would have graduated before the 2000s, no data analytics, whatever he had would have to learn along the way. But it makes a lot of sense at age 40 to say, I want to go for a course on this. Whereas somebody who's just coming out of university now would probably have access to data analytics courses. So it's that kind of thinking that, you know, to give the 40s and above a chance to acquire new skills so that they can have new paths, new directions, and basically, you know, help them grow.
Okay. Desmond, would you like to address that? These 40 plus workers, are they really the ones who are most in need of this?
I would say yes. I maybe just look at the data point of view, right? The Singapore Labour Force Report 2023 do suggest that for those who are on long-term unemployment defined by over 6 months, actually a large proportion, 70 to 80%, are middle career, senior or older workers, above 40 years old. So it shows that this is a group of people, when they lose their job, they tend to remain unemployed for a longer period of time. So that's the first point. Then when we did sort of deep dive into the reason why, and we did survey and talked to many of them, actually they did tell us that first, this is a group of people that have significant financial responsibility, right? So being out of job, being concerned about losing their job is something very real, and yet they have to continue to work because they can't afford to take on training. If they go on training, who's going to support their family? So as the age goes up, we realize that the participation rate for training has gone down. So I think on the ground, we are also sensing that the age 40 and above are facing more challenges and they need more support in the form of training allowance as well as training credits to allow them to take the bold step to actually reskill for their next job.
Right. Yeah. But you know, there have been some surveys. For example, there's a black box survey, and a lot of PMETs said, look, you know, we're also vulnerable to job disruption. I mean, AI is coming, you know. Even our jobs are going to change. So what about us? Why don't we also get more assistance? So, Minister, what do you say to that?
They would if they're of the right age group.
Okay.
Because, like I said, the first 20 years or so, when you just enter the job market, you're already starting to learn, and hopefully your employer will be teaching you, be having on-the-job training. You're acquiring a certain set of skills. By the time you reach 40 or so, depending on your job, most would have reached a certain plateau. You've built up a good, strong base, but things are changing around you. So giving them the opportunity to acquire new skills, for example, through the diploma, the SkillsFuture diploma program, which is available to basically anyone, gives somebody a chance to strike out in a new direction or to deepen their current job base.
Right, right.
In fact, just now I was referring to that group, the survey actually applies to both PMEs as well as non-PMEs.
No, but I was referring to the younger PMEs.
Oh, right.
The people below 40,
Below 40.
who also feel that they are vulnerable.
Yes.
to
Oh.
job disruption.
Okay.
So how about them? So they say, so why are we being left out?
Okay, they need not worry. Firstly, as I mentioned earlier, what they have has got currency. Secondly, there are quite a number of courses that are available to them, the existing SkillsFuture courses.
Okay.
So it's just that 40s and above probably need that extra boost. Whereas the ones who are below 40 have a whole range available to them which they can use. So not left out. It's just a question of trajectory, and of course they can use the other things when they advance in age and when they need it.
Okay, okay. Would you like to add something to that, Alvin? You look like...
I'm probably looking at it in a slightly different perspective. I see that PMETs, they have skills, and when they reach a certain age, they're experienced in their field of industry. But there are some industries that are on the sunset, and they might be losing their jobs as that consequence. However, their skill sets are still relevant. Unfortunately, not in the industry anymore. So that SkillsFuture, where they do the transformation itself, I see it as a possibility for them, right, to look into another industry that's up and coming, but they can repurpose their original skill set into the industry. I think the example that I saw, right, was in the EDB briefing, their media briefing recently, whereby a person from the, I think he was a logistics manager from manufacturing, industrial manufacturing, who transformed and moved his skill set to go to pharmaceutical vaccine plant, which is up and coming. But then this itself for me, right, is a win-win situation. Both he can get something relevant to his level, and the economy itself gains by retaining his skill set, that he is not lost to the system, and he goes and participates in the, for example, a gig economy where his years of experience is no longer useful or relevant to that. So that is my take on this. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Now, there's another part of the SkillsFuture top-up, rather SkillsFuture enhancement, and that is the up to $3,000 a month for 40-year-old plus workers who do full-time courses. Now, there's an observation that this might work for lower wage workers, but is it practical for PMETs who are over 40, who have maybe greater commitments, right? $3,000 a month for full-time courses. Does it make sense? Is this practical for a lot of over 40s? Desmond, what do you say?
Actually, I'm very grateful that government announced this training allowance, because last year in my parliament speech, I did try to call on government to revive this training allowance, which was actually implemented during COVID period. And it was very welcome. And I think a lot of PMEs, even those they are slightly higher paid, they find that this is a very important assurance for them. You know, to move into a training, it will be a period of time, 6 months, 9 months, right? How do they sustain the family, right? So I do agree that actually for the lower wage worker, this will be of course higher impact, because for them to be able to reskill and not be able to put food on the table is something very real. It's the dilemma they have to face.
Yeah.
But having this 3,000 will give them a lot more assurance and be able to support them better. But I think even the PMEs, the higher income earners, will appreciate this support, because it gives them the kind of confidence to move into new skill sets, which may take some time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but if somebody's earning like 7,000 and then suddenly has to stop and earn 3,000 and do a full-time course,
Well, maybe
wouldn't that be difficult?
Well, the idea behind the 3,000 training allowance is that it's meant to be an allowance. It's not meant to be a replacement of salary that you were earning.
Okay.
And it was sized looking at, you know, household expenses. If you are from a dual income household and the other spouse is working, then a 3,000 allowance still goes a long way. If you're a single person not working, the 3,000 still is very helpful. When we were looking at it, we also didn't want to make it so large that it becomes a disincentive to look for a new job. You can become so comfortable just going for more training and more training and getting an allowance which is effectively like a salary, and that may have the wrong signals and wrong consequences as well. So we kept it this amount. I mean, we can always review and see how it pans out, but we thought that this was the right figure to start with.
Okay, very good. Now, on the issue of take-up, I think the statistics show that only 1 in 3 people over the age of 25 have used their SkillsFuture credits in 2023. Now, why is the take-up rate so low? Is it that people have not really embraced the idea of lifelong learning, even though they might think it's a good idea? They haven't gotten around to sort of embracing it. Or is there some other reason? I don't know, Desmond or
maybe I'll start.
Yeah.
Because we did do quite an in-depth study on why people find it difficult to embark on training, especially the mid-career training.
Yeah.
And there are more than one reason. So finances is of course one. So SkillsFuture does address the financial part. But there are 3 other reasons. Second reason is actually time. So many workers find that they can't take time off from their work, and employers may not even support them with protected time of training. And the third reason is actually they didn't know where to start. Right? So I'm already employed. What should I be looking out for? What kind of skill sets is required? And fourth is that actually they find that even if they go through training, what kind of recognition and reward do I get out of it? Right? So there ought to be some look back on the skill sets and the training that I received, on the wages or the recognition from the employers. So these are the 4 reasons. So I think that the SkillsFuture take-up has increased over the years, but I don't expect it to be 100%. So what is the right percentage? Because there are more than one reason, right? Financial is only one. There are 3 other reasons that has to be addressed as well.
Yeah.
So, Zhang, I mean, this is specifically for you. I mean, Desmond mentioned that one of the reasons was whether they will get time off to do the training.
Yes.
Would
absolutely.
companies, especially SMEs, be willing to let workers go to do full-time training because they're already labor constrained, right?
Yes.
So,
I think that there are many facets that maybe I could just shine a light on, right? The first part is maybe I could share a bit, to contribute to the conversation around the workers given full-time allowance. I think that it's a great initiative, right, from the government to actually enable this, because people above 40, it's almost like a reset. You're giving them a chance to reset and then go back to study, and then they get a new lease of life, like a COE renewal, right? And then they can restart everything. Because statistics show that if in terms of hiring, there is a preference for younger people because maybe their skills and their training is a lot more relevant. So being able to go for a reskilling at 40, I think is a great initiative. The concern from the business, right, is that actually, interestingly, at 3,000 or up to 3,000, is it going to be such a strong incentive that it will have, some percentage of the workforce go for this, and then you get a labor shortage, right? So in a very manpower tight situation, just having 10% of your work staff go on a full-time study, that's going to be a big pressure on the company. And we do think that it's quite a good incentive for a person who is thinking of a study to have this allowance. And so that's something that we've got to kind of pan it out, right? And direct to a question, really is about the SkillsFuture. I think it's a process. I think it's been around for a while, but I think it's always an evolving process where we get better and better and make sure that it gets more and more accurate and more aligned to the industry's needs. One of the things that we look at from the business perspective is that the SkillsFuture outcomes, right? Businesses are more interested to look at relevant experiences. So if we can apply SkillsFuture and tie it in more with on-the-job training, on-the-job experience, I think that will result in much better take-up and alignment to the business. Now, I can say that a lot of businesses actually use SkillsFuture in very applied and very specific areas. Other times they do on-job training. Now, if the SkillsFuture course or a particular initiative is very aligned to the business, very often it's actually, it happens together. But what businesses sometimes cannot see is how does a particular course impact the business outcome. And when it doesn't, then they rather the employee focus on what is going to be productive. So I think we want to really look at aligning SkillsFuture and the skills into actual industry outcome. I think that's really important if we are dealing with productivity.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. I think, Desmond, you mentioned another point, which is that what should workers retrain for? Yeah. I mean, a lot of workers don't know what they should retrain for. I think, Minister, you'd mentioned earlier that data analytics was not on the radar screen in 2000. I mean, similarly, we have jobs today like, say, a drone pilot or a blockchain engineer or a prompt engineer for AI. That's one of the hot new jobs, apparently. These were nowhere. I mean, 5 years ago, nobody even dreamed of these jobs. So how do workers know? I mean, what jobs in the future will be? I mean, if I'm laid off, I mean, I have no clue what I should retrain for. With all due respect, maybe the government also doesn't have clear visibility on what's coming in the future down the road. I guess if anybody does, it probably is companies who they will be doing the hiring. They are right on front. So there's a school of thought which says that it's companies really that should be driving the reskilling, retraining process rather than government agencies or. So the question that arises is what role will companies play in reskilling and upskilling workers? So, Minister, would you like to address that?
I think companies play a very important role because you do need companies to be progressive, you need them to be forward-thinking, and you also need them to have a corporate mindset of wanting to invest in their employees. The older mindset is a plug-and-play one. They expect somebody to come out of the university or school fully formed with all the skills and able to just plug them in. But the reality is that from day one when you start a job, you are learning. And the best companies are the ones that have continuing and structured programs for their employees to learn and acquire new skills. Now, some of those can be done in-house, but not necessarily all of them. I still remember, and this perhaps is the right time frame, I still remember the days before social media. So the idea of advertising or marketing is put advertisement in the newspapers or use the yellow pages. That's how, antediluvian that was. Then when social media came along, companies had to acquire these skills, and they're not skills that they would have had in-house. So your employees would either have to go and get a course outside, or you hire young people at that time who were already digital natives, able to handle this. So it's a iterative process, right? And at the same time, companies and government have to work together because government does the horizon scanning. We see the big trends coming along.
Okay.
It's our job to give the early warning signals and say this is coming our way, and to make available funds that would be accessible to both companies and the individuals to tap on, which is what we've done in this budget. So you can see how all three have to work together, employers, employees, and government.
Right.
Because in truth and in fact, you can't see exactly what's over the horizon, but you have a general sense and you can get ready.
Right. So, Alvin, would you like to add something to
Okay.
the relevance of training to jobs?
I think the relevance to training, but I mean, let's go back to the SMEs. I think SME is a huge employer, and their problems on their front in terms of the labor is quite well known. And some of them with, like, let's say 10 persons, right? 10% going to training, right, is quite significant. While a company who has 20,000 people, 10% on training, right, is a very manageable process. So that scale itself has to be understood. Well, my thoughts is that they are a significant employer, right, and of a lot of Singaporeans, of the labor force, right. So their side of the story that we should probably need help also for them, right, in order to incentivize them to send their workers for retraining, off the top of my head is that they also have the issue of I may be wrong, but they feel that sometimes if the employees went for the right training, they may not be able to retain them. So they have that mindset as well. So we also have to help to adjust that mindset. Top of my mind is that we can have a program where such that if the employee went for such training, he will be stayed back to his own company for like 1 year under some kind of incentivized pay or promotion, right? If his skill set is proved to be relevant to the company, then that gives the company assurance that to send the workers for training. At the same time, they can actually see the benefit of the skills, right? The workers being trained for and being able to contribute more to the company. But I think they really need that level of help, because when you are at that small a scale, right, those fears are very real of losing your staff because they are better, they become better.
Yeah. If I can just add, I think
sure.
we also identify that the employer play a key role in workers' training. Because if the employer do not identify the need or even support the workers, it's very difficult for many of the workers to actually take their own time to do it. That's why in 2019 NTUC we started the company training committee. The intent is to actually support employers and businesses in their business transformation. So when they look at their business redesign, their job redesign, then they even initiate training for their workers who are already employed. Right? So they identify the skill sets required because they change the business model, the way they operate, and then they redesign the job, and therefore they are required to train the workers. So that has helped to actually move quite the needle for many of our workers, and also with the support of employers to look at the skill sets and the training for the workers. And in fact, they go on to recognize the skill sets with better wages and some kind of allowance. So I think there are two other things that I've always been working with employers to support our workers. One is protected time off, right? I mean, we mentioned the challenges for SME, but if we see that as an investment for your business productivity, I think employers should try to give some time support for the workers to go training. And second one is actually recognition of their skills. Many of our workers go for training and they come back, everything stays the same. They just keep on going and again. So we're quite happy some companies recently introduced this skills allowance idea. So ST Logistics is one company. They give up to $325 per month for workers who undertake certain skill sets and reach a certain level of competency. So that really motivates the workers. And I was told more than 90% of the workers went through the training and they had these skill sets that are relevant for their job as well. So I think these are the few things I think employers can do.
Right. Mr. Rang, taking off on some of these issues, from you're overseeing hundreds or thousands of SMEs, right? So what do you find on what they're doing about training? Are they spending resources on training? Are they cooperating? Are they encouraging the take-up of SkillsFuture? How are they? What kind of priorities for training do they have?
Yeah, so I think that the direction that the government is setting in this particular budget, really focusing on skills, is a very, very accurate and is a very right direction as a nation. The challenge that then, as we break it down to the SME, is that we have the day-to-day firefighting that most SMEs are dealing with, right? So the question would be that how do we then bridge that? So I think that directionally we are headed in the right direction. Now we look at how can we flow down these initiatives to help make it more appropriate, to carve it nicely for SMEs. And I think we're headed, we have a few things that they are moving in the right direction. I was just following the COS speeches, and we're seeing that there's support in OMIP for overseas training. There's also support for within the company career transition as we change one job within one company to another job within the same company.
Okay.
So I think these are the right direction. And to support that even further, right. I think that we should look at having SkillsFuture related courses, right, have tie-ins with maybe industry attachment or industry training. I think that will also alleviate some of the challenges of manpower. If your manpower going for skills they have attachment components, right? That makes the businesses look at them and say, oh yeah, your skill is not just on paper, but you actually have real life experience. And I think that makes a big difference from an SME perspective. And that also alleviates the manpower concern. So if we tie it better with industry outcome, I think that will motivate businesses to do more and be freer to let their people go for training.
Right.
Actually, I just want to add,
Sure.
because he mentioned a variety of schemes and courses. I've been at MOF, I think, for about since 2016. And I've actually seen the evolution of those courses because a lot of what has been put out in the successive budgets has been based on feedback from SMEs, from employers, from NTUC, telling us that you need to incentivize this or this doesn't work because it incentivizes a different type of behavior. And I think that over the last few years we've been refining those. So I just wanted to say that the SkillsFuture that we have today in its various forms is really the product of a lot of input that's come from industry and from workers themselves.
Okay, so but now we're going to have this step change in SkillsFuture. You're going to have thousands of courses put out by training institutions, educational institutions. I think one concern from some surveys is that who is going to ensure there's quality control in these courses, and there's cost control as well. I mean, many of them are going to cost a lot more than $4,000. So what kind of monitoring is there going to be to ensure that these courses are actually will lead to real meaningful reskilling and will lead to new jobs? So is the government going to do some monitoring of the quality and cost?
Yes, I mean, whenever public funds are involved, obviously we would do monitoring and audits as necessary. But I think the bigger picture is this. The bulk of these courses, actually many of them are done by our IHLs, for the polytechnics, for example.
Yes.
Those that there's already an inbuilt quality framework in terms of the curriculum, the whole system. So we know that if we're sending it to a poly which is publicly funded, they already have to meet certain KPIs and criterion, so that's fine. And then for those that are external vendors, obviously they would be reviewed before they get onto a panel, or not panel, but on the list to qualify for SkillsFuture credits. In other words, we would have to be satisfied about the quality and the relevance of the course before it can be a course that qualifies for a SkillsFuture credit or any other SkillsFuture support.
Okay. So, and Desmond, there's a question you've probably been asked many times before. I'm a worker, 40 years plus. I'm going to go through my training. After I finish my training successfully, who's going to help me find a job? How can you help me find a job?
Okay. Of course, in NTUC, we are committed to support our worker from the job matching, job placement, through training and upskilling. And of course, ultimately, the most important outcome is that they land on a good job with good wages and good prospect. So that's why I think we have this training and placement ecosystem in NTUC, which I lead actually. And there is an Employment and Employability Institute that helps to look at job placement and career coaching. It's not just about job placement, it's also helping them to navigate about the demands of the work, as well as what the skills gaps they may have to meet those jobs. Right? So that's one aspect. The other one is Learning Hub. Learning Hub provides training for our workers. When there is a gap, then we can also curate some courses to bridge those gaps. And finally, I think what is important is that working with the industry, working with the companies to support those companies in their business. I mentioned about Company Training Committee, and that is a very important scheme that has been rolled out with the support of the government to allow business to do transformation, leading to new jobs, new design of work, and the workers can place themselves into those jobs as well. So I think from this point of view, we really want to journey with our workers, especially the mid-career, slightly older workers, to let them know that from the time where either they lose their job or they are really looking at actually finding a new lease of life, right? A new COE, And that's where we want to be able to support them to make sure they have the confidence to navigate through with the support of the government, of course.
So sometimes it's the other way around also, because they have a very specific job or area in mind that they want to do, but they realize that they don't have the necessary skill or qualification. And then, because sometimes when residents come to me and they say, I want to learn this, I'm not sure whether SkillsFuture covers it, can you help me to write to whatever agency to see whether there's help? So I think it works both ways.
Indeed.
Right, right. I think last year, this idea of the job skills integrators was floated. That means the government or the labor movement wanted to cooperate with companies in placement. How is that working out? I mean, how do you see?
So I think there are a few job skills integrator that's ongoing. For example, Nanyang Poly. So ASME is actually working with them to look at how we can tighten that, because Singapore is fundamentally not short of job offerings. What we are short of is the right match, like what Desmond was saying, the right career aspiration, the right salary range, right? And that's the gap that we're dealing with. And I think that the direction that we are headed to look at how companies can also upgrade ourselves and provide better jobs is actually in the right direction. And Job Skills Integrator is actually making a move in this direction, but we're still in the early stages. I think it'll take a few more years to actually pan out and really impact the ground.
Okay. Would you have anything to add on job skills?
NTUC is playing a supporting role for the Job Skills Integrator, I think in the retail sector. So Learning Hub is supporting with sort of training providers for some of the skills to bridge the gaps between what is available in the jobs and the skills needs for our workers. So as Ang has mentioned, I think it's still early stage. We will have to monitor and see how this pan out in the coming years.
Right, right. You know, one of the things that an older worker mentioned to me is that all these training courses, I mean, I'm 40 plus years. I've got 20 years of working experience already. So I'm not going to start something from zero. I shouldn't have to start something from zero. I mean, I already have some skill sets, right? So can we build on that? Rather, a lot of courses start like from scratch, you know? He said, so shouldn't my skill sets be taken into account in both the design and the conduct of these courses? So I don't know who'd like to address that.
Yeah, I can start maybe, you know, from the industry and from a SME perspective, right? I think that we see a lot of value in the older workers from the experience and the leadership perspective, because they've got a lot more experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes we got to decouple the skill against what we call maybe the more broad-based softer skill, which is the ability to lead, the ability to communicate.
Right.
And they've seen a lot more, right? If you complement that with the relevant skill, then that becomes a very strong mix of and package. And the key about companies being able to tap into that through programs like CCP would be to tap into that area while complementing that with very specific areas and skill that that particular industry or that sector requires. And then that becomes a very strong thing that the companies can leverage on.
Okay, right.
Yeah, I do agree that, I mean, even for reskilling, it doesn't mean they start from base zero again, right? So they have existing skill sets. The challenge is actually how do you move from where they are today and how can we tap on the experience and the existing skills for the job that is in demand. So, but of course, for certain sectors, it may be quite challenging. So I've met cabin crew who decided to go into sales, right? So that's a very different skill set. And she went through quite a period of time to upskill herself in doing sales. I've met manufacturing managers going to AI. So that's also another transition that I think his leadership, his analytical thinking, problem-solving skills are important. But the technical skills, understanding how AI applies, this is something that he still had to spend some time, considerable time to level up so that he can play the next role in the new economy.
Right.
I tend to agree that it depends on, if I were to put a simple example, if you're doing HR function in company A, if you transit to a different industry, HR function probably your skill set and your experience will be able to translate to that same equal role. But if you are doing something entirely different, like what you mentioned, manufacturing to AI, right? That transition itself and to get something equivalent made will be a bit more of a tall order. But like I said just now, the earlier example I said about repurposing the skill set to a different industry, right? That probably will work much better. But if you are going into a new green field, right, then that is where it presents the challenge whereby your expectations or aspirations must meet with reality.
Yeah, you know, I sometimes wonder, we run these dramatic stories of people who've made really big career changes. We had a ballet dancer who's become a cybersecurity expert. We ran a story on that. You know, we've got stories of people who've changed completely. I mean, from sort of food and beverage industry, they've gone into technology or something. Well, these are dramatic examples. I don't think they represent the normal sort of the mass of the people. I mean, I think many people would prefer to do something quite adjacent to what they already do now. Or like you mentioned, you know, an HR person going from one company to another company, still doing HR, maybe slightly different, but still in the core competence remains.
That's right.
So I suspect that that's where most people will want to be, right?
Yes.
I
So
mean,
we have seen quite a number who transit from, for example, in semiconductor manufacturing to aerospace manufacturing. So the manufacturing expects the process is still relevant. Of course, the product is a bit different. But the truth of the matter is that our economy is evolving. So now we talk about AI, right? So really the gaps are not in the manufacturing. In fact, we are just moving people around the same sector. But the gaps are really in the emerging sectors like AI, in tech. And that's where we need more people to move out of the current sectors, which are maybe shrinking in terms of job pool, and then take the step to reskill so that we can meet the demands of the emerging sector like AI, sustainability. I think we are quite short of people, even the care economy as well.
right. Okay, there's an issue that Mr. Ang, you mentioned about hiring older workers. I mean, there is still pervasive ageism among Singapore companies. Unfortunately, we had a letter in the Straits Times, I think about, 5 or 6 days ago, written by two people who, they said, we are older workers, we've finished our qualifications in digital skills, and the biggest obstacle that we came across was our age. One of the first questions employers ask is, how old are you, before they hire you. So, I mean, there's so many questions around this. The government has been giving subsidies to incentivize hiring older workers. There's the re-employment subsidies. There's something, the Senior Worker Early Adopter Grant, which encourages companies to voluntarily raise their retirement ages. But I don't know, how effective have these been? And what more can the government do to encourage or incentivize companies to hire more older workers?
I think that, look, speaking from SME perspective, I think that I must say for SMEs, there is a lot of opportunities that we can do to actually improve our own human capital processes. We are not the best in human capital onboarding, training, learning, and development. And I think looking at the direction where we are all headed, we can definitely do better. And this is an area that ASME wants to look at and have companies upskill, working with various people like IHRP and so on to actually have that improved. That definitely is the case. Right, on the question about workers that are a bit older, and the issue of ageism, I actually don't really agree with that. Now, I think it's more a case of whether your skill is a match for what the company needs, especially in terms of experience. Now, no company would turn you down if you have that experience in that needed area. I think likely what is happening is likely that you have the skill based on certification or qualification. But in terms of your actual real work experience, it may be missing and you don't have that runway, right? And that's what I think we can do better if we match skill with actual real world experience and hands-on work and make it part of the skills requirement, right? Then companies would be fighting over themselves just to hire you. Because to me, as a SME owner, I'm not really so concerned about age, rather than the appropriateness of your experience in the job role that I need. So if you are someone that has that real world experience that I can tap on, I would hire you in a heartbeat.
Right. But are you the exception? I mean, a lot of companies, I'm not sure they're all as progressive as you are.
I think that it is, for most companies, they are looking at relevant experience more than whether they're looking at age. Now, I think if you look at beyond, let's say 60, 65, perhaps other factors come into play because you're concerned about the health, the ability, vitality, about the job role and the hours, right? So those are different matters, I think, right? But if you're talking about anywhere between 40 to 60 kind of range, I think it's about real world experience, and companies, I can say I speak for the majority of the companies that's what they are really looking at.
Okay.
Because we are already so tight on manpower.
Yeah.
We cannot afford to be choosy anymore.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Okay.
Right. So why people choose is really that, hey, maybe the skill is not quite matching,
there.
or you may have a paper certification, but I look at your work experience, it's like, but you don't have, you know. So can you pick it up on the job? That's what people are concerned about.
Okay.
I certainly hope he's the exception because we too encounter some workers who came to tell us that they face great challenge. Senior workers, usually closer to senior, above 55, 60, closer to 60. So they find difficulty entering the workforce because of their age.
Okay.
So I think government has been trying to incentivize employers through the credits, as well as to we had this tripartite guideline, right, for workplace fairness. Yes. But I'm looking forward to now we're going to hard code it. We're going to push out the legislation workplace fairness legislation to ensure that actually employers will not discriminate our workers based on their age, but just look at their credibility, their experience, and then they have a fair chance at almost any job they want to.
So I've been told that we have 5 minutes. So I'm going to go skip a question or two and get to the last question that I have, which is that DPM Lawrence Wong indicated that Budget 2024 is only a first installment towards fulfilling the goals of the Forward Singapore initiative. What do you expect in subsequent installments? Alvin, can I start with you? Since this is an easy question for you.
Yeah, no, it's like if we build on what the team that we have talked about, right? I think we've seen the SkillsFuture being upsized significantly with a new, more clearer direction on it. I think on the future budgets itself, I hope that you can work on the other aspects, which is, I think on the employer side, I think there is, it can't be just relying just on the employees. Of course, we heard about how we have to work between the unions, the education sector, the labor force, the companies itself. They all have to come hand in hand. But I think the employers portion, especially for SMEs, right? I think they need a bit more help for them to bring that level of the SkillsFuture take-up rate to a better level.
Okay.
I think that is one area that I would like to see.
Minister, your perspective would be especially appreciated. What's coming down the road? What's the unfinished business?
So much, because when DPM made that statement, he was talking about the plans of the Forward SG report as a whole, and those cover a variety of areas: economy, the social aspect, sustainability or stewardship, our social fabric, our unity as a nation. So it pretty much covers a very wide range. This budget focuses especially on workers and those above 40, because it's an expression of our belief and confidence in them, in our human capital and in Singaporeans. And it's also part of the evolution that we are making in our economy as Singaporeans live longer, as manpower gets tighter. So I think that if you ask what's ahead, a whole range of things, not only limited to the economy. our TFR has fallen below 1. We're going to have to work very
Total
hard.
fertility rate, that is.
Total
Yes.
fertility rate,
Right.
yes. So many things that are, going to be coming up.
Okay. Mr. Rang, what do you expect? What do you hope for, let's say?
Yeah, I think that, as a citizen and as a technology person looking at the broad picture, right? One part is that the investment big picture along the lines of AI, I think is a great initiative. And I hope that we can focus more on being in the innovation space rather than just the end user. Because in AI, I think it's important to be leading rather than just using it. Because then as a user, that you're at the effects of whatever people come up with. And I think Singapore is in the chance to do that. I think a lot of great initiatives over there. From an SME perspective, our concern is that some of the over the years, we find that the businesses, there has been a move towards empowering businesses that are doing well. And we're just concerned that if we could actually empower more businesses so that they form a foundation to grow new businesses and then grow large businesses, then I think that would actually continue the generations upon generations of successful businesses. And in this direction, in terms of skills, I think that the next installment, if we can tighten the integration of skills into businesses even further, like what Alvin was saying, I think that would really help the whole nationwide transformation that improves business as well as individual workforce partnership.
Okay. Very good. Desmond, you have the last word.
Wow, thank you.
Okay, what is the unfinished business from the labor movement's point of view?
Yeah, I'm glad that the workers have the last say, right? So from NTUC's perspective, we are very grateful that this year's budget really addresses many of the concerns on the ground from the workers' perspective. It reflects the government's social compact with the people. It also reflects the workers' compact, how the government, the employers, and the workers have to work together. So I think there are two other areas, of course, we are looking forward, and NTUC have been calling out for support from the employers and government. And one is about the unemployment support. We are looking forward to the announcements of what it entails and how it can support our workers who are looking for jobs and in transition. And the second one we have also been trying to emphasize on is caregiver support. Many of our workers are now facing caregiver challenges, but we need them also to enter that workforce. How can we strike a balance, give them more flexibility, and we look forward to maybe in the next phase of Forward Singapore support, we can come up with more solutions to address some of these concerns.
I'd like to thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Alvin. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rang. Thank you, Desmond. And have a great day.